So we've called this conference today to discuss an officer-involved shooting that occurred on November 1st. Though the incident has not yet drawn media attention, we expect it may once the body-worn camera footage is released. Because this case involved an unarmed teenager and a very unusual sequence of events, our office has accelerated its investigation and legal review. In just 30 days, we completed a process that typically, as you all know, takes between 6 and 12 months. And because we anticipate community interest, we believe it's important to clearly explain to the public our office's role in officer-involved shooting investigations, as well as our legal conclusion. So our office's role in these matters is narrow but critical to determine whether a shooting officer's conduct was criminal or not. That's it. And so today I'll walk through the facts and the law that led us to conclude that this shooting officer's actions were not criminal and were in fact lawful. Around 6 p.m. on Saturday, November 1st, 4 teenagers in Northwest Jacksonville planned and carried out a theft of a DoorDash driver's car. They placed an order, distracted the driver when he arrived, separated him from his vehicle, and stole his black Kia Optima. That auto theft set in motion a chain of events that ultimately led to one of those teenagers, a 14-year-old, being shot by a police officer after fleeing from a dangerous crash scene. A little over an hour before the shooting, a rapid series of 911 calls came in reporting 3 different felonies: an auto theft, a hit and run, and a drive-by shooting. These crimes occurred both close in time to one another, actually within minutes of each other, and close in distance, within 2 miles. And because of information reported, they appeared, in fact, to be related. We now know they are not. First, at 6:05 p.m., the DoorDash driver called 911 to report his black Kia Optima stolen. This happened in District 6. Minutes later, at 6:09 p.m., and just over a mile away, a caller called in to 911 and reported that he had been the victim of a hit and run involving a black Kia. This happened in neighboring District 1. Across the street from the hit and run, also in District 1, and just 3 minutes later, 911 was flooded with calls and ShotSpotter activation regarding a drive-by shooting. That shooting has become a homicide. Because of how tightly clustered these events were, dispatch issued a BOLO, that's a be on the lookout for, across the city, indicating that the stolen Kia was also the suspect car in the shooting. This happened at 6:23 p.m. It's important that you understand our city is divided into 6 police districts, and each district works on its own radio channel. In addition to the citywide BOLO, District 5 dispatchers issued a radio dispatch on the District 5 channel, linking the shooting and the auto theft to the Kia Optima. This happened at 6:24 p.m. Shortly after the BOLO went out, officers working the shooting identified a different suspect vehicle, and they called it into dispatch. Not a black Kia Optima, but a black Dodge Durango. Dispatch relayed that updated information via radio channel to District 1, but not to District 5. Meanwhile, task force officers in District 5, these are officers who specialize in apprehending violent felons, continued searching for the stolen Kia, operating still under the outdated and incorrect information that it was, in fact, the shooting vehicle. Around 7:45 p.m., those task force officers located the stolen Kia and attempted a felony stop. When they activated their lights, the Kia fled, swerved through an intersection into oncoming traffic lanes, struck a patrol car, and crashed into a building. 4 individuals were inside the Kia. 2 stayed and were detained by police. 2 ran. The scene was chaotic and dark. 3 cars, the Kia and 2 JSO patrol cars, had crashed into one another and a building. 5 task force units were attempting the takedown of what they believed to be a shooting vehicle, one that had just fled law enforcement, endangered other drivers, and crashed into a patrol car. One of those who ran was a 14-year-old. Officer Cahill, a Zone 5 task force officer, jumped out of his vehicle and started chasing this suspect to prevent his escape. He believed he was the driver and believed he was armed. This belief was based on the following. Cahill's understanding that the Kia had been involved in a shooting, the suspect's obvious intent to avoid apprehension at all costs. The car had just fled police at high speed and crashed. His inability to see the suspect's left hand in the dark, the suspect running with his arm angled toward his waistband, which is a trained and known threat indicator. Cahill's body-worn camera captured him shouting, 45, 45, to describe that arm position. The suspect was running into a neighborhood. During the chase, Officer Cahill commanded the suspect to remove his hands from his pockets or he would shoot. Almost simultaneously, he fired 4 shots, striking the teen in the back. It was quickly discovered the suspect was unarmed, and his motion toward his waistband was likely grabbing at his pants, not drawing a weapon. Thankfully, he survived. Our office responded to the scene that night of the shooting, and since then we have reviewed the body-worn camera footage, surveillance footage, witness interviews, and all relevant radio and dispatch records. Our officer-involved critical incident panel, which is made up of senior lawyers and investigators in this office, has convened twice to meet on this case. We have consulted a use of force expert, and we expedited our review, as I mentioned at the beginning, given the teen's age and the unusual facts. We have reached this factual conclusion. A rare and rapid convergence of 3 separate felonies, the auto theft, the hit and run, and the shooting, close in time and distance, led officers to logically but incorrectly believe the same Kia was responsible for all 3 crimes. The stolen car report was accurate. The connection to the shooting was not. When it was learned that the Kia was not the suspect vehicle in the shooting, this information, as I mentioned before, was dispatched over the District 1 radio channel, but not the District 5 channel. And that communication breakdown is central to this case. The task force officers in District 5 continued to operate on the belief that the stolen Kia was linked to the shooting and consequently continued to operate under a heightened threat. As I mentioned, it's our responsibility to determine whether Officer Cahill's use of lethal force was criminal. The United States Supreme Court has made clear over and again, well, most recently this spring, the legal test for evaluating an officer's lethal use of force is the totality of the circumstances. We, in reviewing his actions, must assess his actions from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, not with the benefit of hindsight, and must consider all facts known to and reasonably believed by him at the moment force is deployed. The question is not what we know now to be true today, but what a reasonable officer could have believed in that moment based on the information available to him. Florida law also authorizes deadly force to prevent the escape of a suspect believed to have committed a forcible felony when the officer reasonably believes and perceives a threat to himself or others. Based on the totality of the circumstances in this case, Officer Cahill's belief met the threshold permitting lethal force. Our review identified a communication breakdown that certainly contributed to this incident. When dispatch received updated suspect vehicle information, the correction was not broadcast citywide. JSO is currently updating its dispatch protocols to ensure that critical updates such as this are pushed citywide on all district radio channels. We have provided recommendations to support those changes. And while communication gaps contributed to this incident, it is simultaneously true that the teenager's decisions to steal a car and then flee police created a dangerous, unpredictable environment that put themselves, law enforcement officers, and the public at large at risk. But for that theft of the DoorDash driver's car, this erroneous conflation of information also would not occur. We have charged all 4 teens with grand theft auto. We have met with the teens' parents. We've explained our findings, our legal conclusions, and we have shown them the body-worn camera footage. They have expressed their wish that the footage not be released, and we have explained we are bound by Florida's public records laws and cannot prevent or prohibit its release. That said, we have deliberately today avoided naming the juvenile in this matter. We have authorized JSO to release the body-worn camera footage and expect they will do so in short order. And before the public views it, several cautions are warranted related to questions I expect the public to have. Number one, the body-worn camera footage that you will see shows only part of the story. It cannot capture everything the officer knew, heard, saw, or perceived. That is precisely why our investigation has gathered all available facts, so that we can understand and be able to convey to the public the full story, not just the portion visible on the video. Secondly, no gun is visible and none was recovered. The law does not require an officer to wait until he actually sees a weapon before responding. Courts have repeatedly upheld deadly force when officers reasonably believe a suspect to be armed and dangerous. That's true even when the suspect has later been found to be unarmed. Number three, the command and the shots occurred almost simultaneously. The law does not require officers to issue warnings or to wait for compliance when they reasonably perceive an imminent threat. Warnings are required only when feasible, and rapidly evolving and life-threatening encounters often do not allow for delay. The teen was shot in the back. Courts have made clear that a suspect's back being turned does not by itself negate an imminent threat. In a recent opinion, Justice Kavanaugh noted that fleeing can well be indicative of a larger danger, and that a suspect who escapes may pose a deadly threat to others. Indeed, in this case, this suspect was running toward a neighborhood. And the takedown finally was forceful, and that level of force is consistent with and indicative of not just Officer Cahill's belief, but his fellow officers' collective beliefs that they were seizing an armed and dangerous felon. Their actions reflected the threat they believed they were confronting. The public and the viewer will have the benefit of facts known today that the suspect is just 14 and that he did not have a gun. It is important to remember these are both facts not known to the shooting officer at the time. This incident arose from an unusual and unfortunate alignment of circumstances, really a perfect storm of timing, proximity, logical but incorrect assumptions, and communication gaps. And while those circumstances may well indeed give rise to civil liability, they actually also help explain and support the reasonableness of the officer's perceptions and actions at that moment in time. They do not establish criminal liability. You have heard me reference over and again the law, and that is because it is a standard that we at the State Attorney's Office are bound to apply. And here, without fear or favor, we have done just that. With that, I'll take any questions that any of you have.
Do we have any update on the teen's condition? You mentioned he survived, but any update? Is he?
Yes, he is out of the hospital.
Was the Kia the hit and run car, or was that another car? So are there three different cars in this situation?
Great question. Yes, there are three different cars. All three of these incidents are in fact unrelated. It was believed that they were related because of the timing of these calls, of these felonies, and the fact that both the hit and run and the auto theft both came in as describing a black Kia.
How close was the Durango drive-by shooting to the car theft? Just, I know you mentioned they're nearby zones, but do we have an idea of like?
Yes, so the shooting is actually only 400 feet away from the hit and run, which was just over a mile away from the auto theft. So I mentioned that the city is divided into 6 districts. These 3 districts, 1, 5, and 6, all share a border with one another. And so that actually contributed to this convergence of the radio channels. Had all of these things happened in one district and the dispatcher's been updated in real time with incoming information, that would have been dispersed to those officers receiving that information. In this case, unfortunately, it didn't happen simply because they were, these 3 things happened in 2 separate districts.
I know JSO typically doesn't pursue if it's a non-violent crime. You mentioned it was a felony stop. Would the carjacking alone, had they had all the updated information, would they have pursued?
So, great question. JSO does have a pursuit policy, and it authorizes law enforcement officers with JSO to chase forcible felons, which would include carjackings, murder, shootings, rapists, kidnappers. It would not include auto theft. And so, frankly, the task force officers in District 5, I mentioned, are working under a heightened threat assessment. They believe at the time they are taking down a shooting vehicle.
Has your office spoken with Sheriff Waters about your conclusion on this?
I've not spoken directly to Sheriff Waters, but I have communicated, yes, to his executive staff, our legal conclusions. And we had the ability, with me today is the Assistant State Attorney who has led this investigation, Christopher Huban, who's done a really remarkable job. And both he and I have gone over to the dispatch call center. We've learned a lot about communications through this investigation. And so we've been in contact with JSO as we've worked through how the radio dispatch, how it went out, and what we could do in the future, what they can implement to ensure this doesn't happen again.
And I know you kind of touched about the reason to kind of expedite this investigation through your office. Did something kind of flag your attention with this specific OIS?
Sure.
Expedite that?
Sure, good question. I mean, we look around the country at what happens when frankly shocking body-worn camera footage is released and how it can spread and go viral on social media. We could not immediately report these facts because we needed to understand all of the facts. And obviously this took me some time to walk through this timeline with you. It took a lot of time to understand all of the radio traffic. It wasn't all captured on body-worn camera. And so in expectation that the community is going to have a lot of questions about this, in light of the fact that this teen was 14 years old, we thought it important to really work around the clock to get this done and to reach our legal conclusion and let the public know.
I know that one of the officers broke his nose in the crash itself, so I don't know if that would that escalate in terms of the use of force, that alone, that it's almost like that officer was in a way, not assaulted, but injured?
Well, another good question. And so, but that fact, everything is unfolding very rapidly. As I mentioned, the Supreme Court has long ago said that the reason that the instruction is that we cannot look at or assess an officer's decisions with the benefit of hindsight, but we have to look at what he knew and believed at that time. This scene was incredibly chaotic. And while there was an officer who broke his nose crashing into the building, I do not know that that was even known to the shooting officer at the time. He jumps out of the car and believes he's chasing the driver of the Kia.
As JSO.
But to your point, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
he does know and can hear through radio traffic and on views himself this crash. So not only does he have the facts or the belief that this car has been involved in a shooting, that it's stolen, but he's now, witnessed himself two additional felonies, the aggravated fleeing from the police in the car itself and the crash.
Has JSO given you any idea how long it will take to update its policy?
They've actually provided us a draft, and we met internally and have shared with them our thoughts. And so I think they're going to move very rapidly on this. Yes.
And you said that they were changing the way that they communicate when things like this do transpire.
So it's unbelievable the amount of calls they get. They get approximately 100,000 calls a month at the dispatch center. And because as I understand it, they're divided on different radio channels because it would be impossible for the city to function under one radio channel. And so I believe this is a question probably better directed to them, but what we have recommended is that in the case of forcible felonies, not all updated suspect information, but in the case of forcible felonies where the pursuit policy allows chase, that any updated suspect information about suspects themselves or cars be broadcast citywide on all district radio channels.
And before that, would they have just been across separate channels before? It wouldn't have been a citywide. That's not standard procedure for JSO.
They've never been faced, as I understand it, we've not been faced, the city hasn't been faced with a confluence of, that's why I called it a perfect storm of events like this. So I think that making sure that they're trained specifically on this and it's a matter of protocol is to safeguard so this doesn't occur again.
What was the reaction of those teens' parents to the video, body-worn camera footage, and the findings from your office that you presented to them?
Mr. Huban actually sat down with them and their counsel. I understand they were very distressed.